lies in front of you is the 2014 Chrysler 200 Touring 2.4 with 90,000 miles. Now, the 200 was originally introduced in 2011 following the discontinuation of the Chrysler Sebring, as this was its successor. Now, there are two generations of the 200. This belonged to the first generation, which belonged from 2011 to 2014. The second gen being introduced in 2015, which lasted until 2017 when it was discontinued, leaving Chrysler only with the 300 and the somewhat recently introduced Pacifica. Now, this 200 is equipped with a 2.4 liter four-cylinder that produces a little under 200 horsepower. And nonetheless, this is an entry-level Chrysler model that is affordable. But nonetheless, we'll be taking you around the Chrysler 200 in this video, showing off its various features and characteristics, and seeing where it falls on the lemon list evaluation scale. Stay tuned.
And before we get into the tour, I want to give you just a little bit of history. In 2005, Chrysler had 6 cars in its production line: the 300, the Pacifica, the Crossfire, the PT Cruiser, the Sebring, and the Town & Country. In 2010, Chrysler then had 4 cars: the 300, the Sebring, the Town & Country, and the PT Cruiser. When this car was introduced in 2011, it was intended to kind of kickstart and revitalize the Chrysler brand, and it sold pretty well in its first couple of years, but plummeted after the second generation was introduced. In the current year of 2020, with the 200 now 3 years gone, Chrysler's only left with 2 vehicles in its production line, the 300 and the somewhat recently remodeled Pacifica. I'm a bit concerned regarding Chrysler's future, as it does not seem to be going in the right direction, but who knows, maybe Chrysler can come out with some wacky design car and maybe surprise the auto industry. Who knows? Nonetheless, on with the tour of the 200.
Moving to the front grille of the 200, I actually really like the design of this grille, honestly. Chrysler's got their big suave logo atop the grille of this vehicle. Then you have a 5-tiered grille, kind of giving it a bit of a luxurious look to the exterior of a pretty economical vehicle. So nice touch on the exterior on Chrysler's part. So continuing with the exterior of the 2014 200, as you can see, I like the little 200 badge printed in chrome lettering on the back of the rear of the door. As you can see, this chrome kind of runs throughout the entirety of the front of the vehicle, and the windows are a little darker for a stock vehicle than most other mid-size sedans, so that's a bit of a nice touch, I suppose. But nonetheless, Chrysler wants to give you a little bit of a luxurious touch by, as you can see, with the 200 badge and the chrome lining throughout the rest of the vehicle. And as far as the doors go for a mid-size sedan, the front seat is pretty roomy, which I'll get to in a moment. The back seat is a little tighter than some of the other mid-size competitors, but I will touch on that very shortly. So moving to the trunk of the 2014 Chrysler 200, as you can see, the trunk space is pretty decent. It is a mid-size sedan, a little bit smaller than some of its competitors, such as the Honda Accord. Nonetheless, though, if you want to haul some somewhat bigger things, as you can see, you got a snow brush back there. You can hold a decent amount of stuff in the rear of your 200. Moving to the interior of the 2014 Chrysler 200, as you can see, you have your Chrysler badge printed in this fancy chrome styling right here. The steering wheel is plastic wrapped, similar to the likes of a Honda LX trim. You can see your various features on the steering wheel for your hands-free access right here if you want to use these instead of physically moving to the center stack to use these. You have a few blank switches here. If you got the highest trim, you would get these features with you, but nonetheless, pretty handy if you needed to use them. And moving to the gauge cluster of the 200, as you can see, it's a pretty generic looking gauge cluster, simple and easy to use. You can see here you have your fuel gauge and your temperature gauge, your speedometer and your odometer right here. If you want to change what displays in your gauge cluster screen, as you can see, we have the odometer showing the mileage. You hit this little knob right here, or button. As you can see, there's your trip odometer, your second trip odometer, the outside temperature. Hit it again, and you are right back to your mileage. Pretty simple and basic, nothing too outlandish in the front of the 200. So continuing with the interior of the 2014 Chrysler 200, as you can see, we're gonna move to the center stack now. As you can see here, you have 2 AC vents a nice little analog clock for that luxurious touch, as you can see. Pretty nice with that little Chrysler badge right on top of the hands of the clock, or the arms. Moving below here, you have a pretty generic infotainment system. It's just the basic radio system, as you can see here. You have your various AM, FM, and radio features, a CD outlet in case you want to listen to some CDs in your 200, and your various radio presets with your various volume knobs and the on button. A pretty basic infotainment system, nothing too outlandish. It's a very generic one, similar to a car from the 2000s, simple to use, and, simple. As you move down here, as you can see, you have a traction control and your hazards. 2 blank switches here. Like I said, if you got the fully loaded 200, you would have a little more features, but nonetheless, you have your traction control and your hazards right here. Moving below, you have your various AC settings. It is not a dual zone climate, it is a single zone. As you can see, there is one knob for temperature. As you can see here, blue is cool, red is heat. Pretty basic to use, and you have your various airflow and the fan speed settings. And if you move back down below a little bit more, you have a pretty deep storage pocket right here in the center console. In some sedans, you have a little flap that you could kind of press and it'll open up if you want to hide this. You don't have this in this vehicle, but it's a very minor feature. Storage-wise, pretty good amount of storage. I can fit most of my hand in there. You can fit a few small amenities in there, as you can see, but pretty decent storage on the interior. Continuing with the interior of the 200, one cool little touch, I think, if you move behind the steering wheel, you will see this little black button right here, right next to the steering wheel. As you can see, it is a car with the trunk open. This is your trunk latch button. As you can see, usually in most cars, they have a little latch right here to pull somewhere along the interior near the door. In the 200, you have a little button. You press this, and you open your trunk. Kind of a cool little feature, kind of random and different, but I don't know, I get a little kick out of this little button right here. So continuing with the interior of the 200, you can see here, you have your gear shifter, a little bit of chrome right here. You just, very simple gear shifter to use. A little bit of a chrome lining around it for a little bit of a luxurious touch. Continuing though with the center stack, you have 2 pretty good sized cup holders right here with even more chrome lining. You have your e-brake, and as you can see, you have a leather wrapped center console. If you want to open it up, simply lift up. If you want to get a little deeper into the storage, you lift this up and you have a deeper storage pocket. Pretty decent amount of storage, nothing too huge. This is a relatively small vehicle, but nonetheless, if you want some storage, the 200 provides you with a decent amount of it. So assessing the seats and the comfort of the 200, you can see you have these pretty plush cloth seats right here. They're fairly comfortable, not as comfortable as the likes of a leather seat. If you were to get the highest trim of the 200, you would have the leather seats provided for you. Nonetheless, so if you want to go on a long road trip, these seats will, provide decent comfort for you. They're a little bit of a cheaper cloth on the interior, but nonetheless, fairly decent comfort on the interior of the 200. So moving to the rear of the 2014 200, the rear seat room is pretty decent. Like I said, the seat is pushed up decently far. I got a good amount of legroom. I'm about 5'10" or so. Pretty equivalent to the other mid-sized competitors that I've reviewed. A little bit of a larger mid-size, maybe like the Accord would have a little bit more room. This was similar in size though to like a Chevy Malibu, I would say. The seat-wise, the comfort is the same as the interior. Obviously, it's the same material quality with the smooth black cloth. And one other thing you get for the rear seat passengers, if you're not hauling 5, you can pull this little cover down and you have 2 cup holders that are actually pretty good size in the rear, and a little armrest if you wish to use it or so. And if you want easy access to your trunk, simply flick this little latch and voila, you have full access to your trunk. One thing I will commend Chrysler on is that as this trunk access from the rear is a bit easier to use than some of its other competitors, which is nice if you want to use it in a pinch. Nonetheless, so it's a nice little touch and a very basic back seat like most other vehicles. So continuing with the rear seats of the 200, as you can see, you have a storage pouch on the driver's side. However, on the passenger side, tough luck for the rear passenger of the back seat of the 200, they do not get a storage pouch. And one other cool little touch I found kind of humorous, if you can see this little badge right here, it is a closed water bottle next to a juice box, advising you to not put a topless drink or a strawed beverage in the rear of your 200. So getting behind the wheel of the 2014 Chrysler 200, First thing you notice, the steering of this vehicle is surprisingly like a little tighter than I imagined it would be, and that's not a bad thing. This tight steering is a bit of a perk, well, in my opinion, when you're driving a sedan. It kind of minimizes a little bit of the body roll. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely some body roll in this vehicle that is not as precise as a luxury German cruiser. However, you know, it's a little tighter than I expected, which is a nice bit of a touch. Nonetheless, so you know, it's a pretty smooth riding vehicle. The comfort's fine, like I said. The cloth seats are, you know, they're a good size for this mid-size sedan. Pretty comfortable. Not as comfy as a plush leather seat, but still, you know, it provides decent comfort for you. Going up a bit of a hilly road. As far as speed-wise on the Chrysler 200, it's fair, you know. The engine's fine. It's a little bit slow going up to 60 because it is a 2.4 four-cylinder opposed to the V6, but nonetheless, it's not horribly. It's not too sluggish. It's fair. Still, the quality of the interior, it's fine. You know, it's a good car that'll get you from point A to point B. You know, I will say, I mean, Chrysler does get a lot of hate on its vehicles, and I mean, you know, it's hard to assess long-term reliability as I don't own one of these, but if you're just looking for a simple car from point A to point B, a 200 is a great option for you. You know, it's fairly cheap, the quality's fine, you know, it's good. You know, if you just want a simple car, I mean, I think the 200 would fit you pretty nicely, in my opinion. Still though, I'm about to take a turn in about a moment. See how the turning radius of this vehicle is. Assessing the turning radius of the 200, it's pretty good. You know, it's not as adaptive and quick to your touch as like a 5 Series, obviously, but a 5 Series is almost double the price of this thing. Taking another turn right here, let's see how it handles it. Yeah, the turning's pretty good. It's not super sharp like I just mentioned, but it's pretty solid overall. Just overall though, the 200, you know, it's a pretty basic vehicle. There's not a lot of outlandishness to point out in this car, but it's fair. You know, like I said, if you want something simple, it'll suit you nicely. You're not gonna be blown away by anything like super outlandish or luxurious. But if you just want a simple car that handles pretty nicely, it's affordable, gets pretty solid gas mileage, 200 is a good option for you. It is now time for the interview section, which answers 6 generic questions one would ask when going to purchase a vehicle. Question number 1 is, do I like the 2014 200? And the answer is yes. The 200 is a very good car for an entry-level person who's looking for a simple car to use, and that could come in handy for a lot of people, so yes, I like the 200. Question number 2 of the interview section is, what is my favorite part about the 200? And on a very specific note, I am a big fan of little stuff in cars. I like the little analog clock that is found in most Chrysler vehicles as a little subtle luxury touch. Aside from that, though, this car is fine, but on a very specific note, I like the little analog clock as a cool little quirk of the 200. Question number trace of the interview section is, what is my least favorite part about the 200? That would be the reviness of the drive. If you couldn't tell in the video, when I was driving the 200, I'd push the gas and it would kind of like lurch a little bit. It has a bit of the rev lines in this vehicle is a little peculiar. It reminds me of my truck a little bit, but that would be probably my least favorite feature about the 200. Question number quattro of the interview section is, what is the most outlandish feature of the 200? This vehicle is a pretty basic vehicle with not a lot of outlandish features. However, I kind of like the weird little trunk latch. Like I said in the beginning of the video, most vehicles have a trunk latch near the hood latch down below, as you can see here. But in this vehicle, the trunk latch is a little button that you press, a bit of a different feature, so that'd probably be the most outlandish feature of the 200. Question number 5 of the interview section is the 200 worth its value? And I would say yes. As I mentioned earlier in the video, if you're looking for a very economical and affordable car that will get you from point A to point B, the 200 will do just that. This car is not expensive. As I mentioned, you can probably get a cheap one for a pretty reasonable price, under $15,000 probably, if it has high mileage, maybe even 10. But yeah, I would say the 200 is worth its value if you're looking for an entry-level car from point A to point B. And question number 6 of the interview section is, would I ever want or own the 200? And the answer is no. While this car is, a bargain for most people, I myself would not particularly want to own one. I'm a fan of larger vehicles, I say in all of my videos, but particularly I would not want to own this. But if you're looking for an entry-level vehicle, as I said, this car would be nice for you.
Now that we've evaluated the Chrysler 200's characteristics and features, it's time to see where it falls in the Lemon List evaluation scale. Before I begin, I would like to thank my friend Chris for lending me his 200 for the production of this video. Both him and his brother Connor have YouTube channels of their own with some really awesome content, and I'll link their channels below if you want to go check them out. Now on with the scoring. Starting with the exterior, the 200 is a decent looking car, not ugly, but not breathtaking, earning a 5 out of 10. Interior on the 200 is pretty bland, with a lot of cheap dark plastic, earning a 4 out of 10. Roadtrip on the 200 is also mediocre, as the cloth seats are nothing beyond adequate, earning a 4 out of 10. MPG on the 200 is solid for its size, having a combined estimated MPG of 25.5 miles per gallon, earning a 6 out of 10 on the MPG scale. Storage on the 200 is average as well, having reasonable rear seat room and trunk space for its size, earning a 5 out of 10 for storage. Character on the 200 is poor, as this vehicle is not unique by any standards, earning a 2 out of 10 for character. Wishlist on 200 is also average, as the car did not possess many up-to-date features when it was originally introduced, let alone for modern standards, so you can't be expecting optimum luxury at 20 grand, earning a 5 out of 10 for Wishlist. Handling on 200 is honestly better than expected, having somewhat tight steering and handling. Still, 200 is no sports car, and it earns a 4 out of 10 for handling. Excitement on the 200 is low as expected. This car is not exciting or exhilarating, earning a 1 out of 10 for excitement. Stupidity on the 200 is strong. Let me remind you, this is a good thing. The higher the stupidity score, the less amount of stupid features. The 200 does not have many odd touches aside from the lack of a storage pouch for rear seat passengers, earning an 8 out of 10 for stupidity. Pricing of 200 is a strong point as mentioned throughout this video multiple times. Like I said, this is an economical car if you have a low budget or want a simpler vehicle, earning an 8 out of 10. Engine responses on the 200 is alright, as the 2.4 liter 4-cylinder is average, not having a ton of pep. This probably would have scored higher if it had the 3.6 liter V6, still earning a 4 out of 10 for engine responsiveness. And overall amenities on the 200 is poor, as this car has little more than radio and AC, not even having a small screen, which some luxury cars had in the mid-2000s. The limited trim of the 200 had a screen, but this trim does not. For these reasons, I can't give the 200 more than a 4 out of 10 for overall amenities. Add that all together, you get a grand total of 60 out of 130, divide that by 13 categories is 4.62. The 200 falls near the bottom of the Lemon List, narrowly outperforming the 2005 Toyota Tundra, 2004 Honda Accord, and 1998 Jeep Wrangler. In comparison with some modern competitors, the 2017 Honda Accord and Chevy Malibu, as well as the 2016 Honda Civic, both outdo the 200 by a wide margin. Although the 200 is an affordable option for many people, I would advise looking at a Honda Accord, Toyota Camry, Chevy Malibu, or a similar competitor, for you'll get better quality and reliability for your money. While the 200 is an adequate car, its out-of-date features and the notoriously troublesome Chrysler reliability hurt it in the long run, being another reason why I fear for Chrysler's future. I hope all of you are staying safe amongst this crazy outbreak, and as always, thank you for watching.